Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Zone Blitz. I'm Vince Miller, joined by Ashton Overholt, my co-host. We have a breaking news podcast. Well, I guess it's not exactly breaking news. We've kind of known about this for a few days, but now it's really coming out. It looks like it's actually going to happen. Texas and Oklahoma are going to join the SEC if everything holds the way it's looking like it will hold. So we just thought we'd get on quick and do an emergency podcast for you guys, talk a little bit about what's happening. Ashton, first initial response to this.
It's crazy. It's out of the blue. Who saw that coming? No, I think every few hours it just gets more and more serious. Like we just keep realizing, like, oh my goodness, like it's really on the doorstep. We realize now they've been talking for almost 6 months. It's and Texas A&M was left out of that conversation. Everyone but Texas A&M. So it is. It's going to be crazy. It's going to change more in the next couple of weeks than we've probably ever seen before.
Yeah, I honestly yesterday when I was hearing things, I was like, it's leverage, get more money from the Big 12, but there's no way it's actually going to happen. And today it really sounds like it's going to happen. And we are recording this on Friday, the 23rd, just for reference sake. But yeah, it sounds like this is going to be a thing that happens, and it's honestly it's crazy. Like I did not see this coming at all. I didn't think we would see any more conference realignment anytime soon, unless it was like group of five teams joining a Power Five conference. Um, Texas and Oklahoma. Where do you even go? I mean, there's so many. This affects the SEC. It crazy much affects like the other Big 12 teams. Does this turn into an arms race? Or does it just end the arms race? Because I mean, at this point, if you're the other Power Five conferences, there's nothing you can do now to be on par with this, is there?
No, I don't think so. So from right off the bat, the SEC has solidified its standing as the best conference, as the strongest conference, we'll say, and the conference that will have the most money and the most viewers. Now it is an arms race still for the other conferences who are now just simply scrambling to try to pick up the pieces, what's left. The Pac-12, it feels like, is finished as we know it. They would be, I mean, honestly though, like I think the Pac-12 will come and get the rest of the Big 12's teams. I think the Big Ten is going to vulture in and probably swipe a few, and maybe possibly the ACC try to go get maybe a West Virginia. I mean, we're not really sure. So they're going to kind of pull the Big 12 apart a little bit between those other three conferences, and I think you can quickly see that becoming where they're going to have to pick up a Houston, a UCF, just to remain solvent as a conference. So it could be very interesting. A lot of things are going to change here shortly.
But my question with that is, you mentioned Houston, UCF. You could also talk about group of five teams like Boise State, Memphis.
Yeah.
And then you look at the eight remaining Big 12 teams: Oklahoma State, Kansas, Texas Tech, TCU, West Virginia, you mentioned. Do any of these actually move the needle? Like, if you're the Big 10, can you actually make a lot? Can you make an appreciably higher amount of money by adding any of these teams? Is there actually a point to adding these teams? Because to me, it feels like, yeah, there's a lot of solid teams you can add. I'm just not sure how many of them move the needle at all.
No, yeah, that's a great point. The Oklahoma State, maybe you could argue Oklahoma State is one that's probably the most coveted team still left in the Big 12, that people want. Kansas, it has the argument because of the basketball, right? But not in a college football standpoint. So you see the Big Ten. The Big Ten's probably going to try to get both of those teams, you would assume. If these moves go through, is that they'll be trying for Oklahoma State and Kansas. There's Yeah, now that starts to get really dicey then, as far as what's like the Big 12 commissioner, like what does he even do? Like what's the pitches that he's making right now? Honestly, I probably would see some politicians getting involved here just to try to, because there's a lot at stake for a lot of teams. I think we saw this maybe over the summer with the Super League in Europe and the soccer. For those that keep up, the same thing kind of happened there earlier this summer, where all the big teams tried to join, and it ended up getting pulled apart mainly by politicians. Just a grassroots thing where, hey, we're not going to let all the big teams just go play on their own. We may see that here.
So if you're the Big 12, I guess, I mean, you kind of have to be trying to add, maybe the best four group of five teams you can think of. What else can you possibly think to do? And obviously, it's kind of not up to you. The member schools, it feels like they're gonna. I mean, I guarantee you, they're talking amongst each other, amongst themselves right now. The ads of those schools. If you're an Oklahoma State, a Kansas State, whatever, are you trying to join another Power Five conference, or are you hoping that you guys can stay there at a Houston, a Memphis, Cincinnati, a Boise State?
That's a huge. I don't know. I'm not sure where you go. Like, it would feel like if you're Oklahoma State, you would probably want to go Pac-12, preferably Big Ten if you could get in, if they would have you. If not, maybe Pac-12 would. If you're Kansas, that kind of feels like the same thing. Probably you're going to have more money there. You're going to be, you as a university will be looked after better if you're part of that conference. I think it was, in a lot of ways, this is the iceberg splitting up, and there's a lot of, it's now in, it looks like it's going to be into four big camps is what it looks like. And yeah, you want to make sure you're on one of those four life rafts, or if not, you're going to be playing with what are now currently group of five teams as a conference.
Yeah, I agree. But also, like, if you think about it, if we talk about four major, like, 16 team conferences, that could happen. We could just see the rest of the Big 12 just kind of float to whatever conferences are left. But even in that scenario, like, no other conference is really going to be able to even compete with the SEC, in my opinion. Like, the SEC has already been the dominant football conference for at least a decade, and it just feels like they've like stamped that, like it's done. No one else can actually match that now at this point.
The Big Ten had a chance at this. The Big Ten and Texas flirted together, was it 8 or 10 years ago, and that it was a whole big thing where we thought Texas may go to the Big Ten. We weren't sure. The Big 12 kept it all together at that point, and it was because of Texas. Now with Texas and on top of that Oklahoma leaving, I think it leaves the Big Ten is the one that I think maybe is losing the most in all of this. This is a conference that just recently added on Rutgers and Maryland. I hope they kept that receipt. Like, can they return those teams? Especially when you're looking at the SEC adding Oklahoma, Texas, you added Rutgers and Maryland. It's a tough look. It did not turn out well for the Big Ten. We'll see how they rebound from here.
Yeah, and that's one reason why. Okay, so it's been floated already. Kansas to the Big Ten. The Big Ten already kind of made that move with Maryland, didn't they? Like, a basketball powerhouse that is very subpar at football. And I'm not sure that they are glad that they did that. I'm not sure that they look back on that and like, man, we're really glad we added Maryland and Rutgers. And yeah, I just don't know where you go. Like, do you repeat that move with the Kansas? Yeah, you probably go after Oklahoma State. But yeah, it just seems like no one else is really going to be able to match this. And it really makes me wonder, looking at it from now, Texas and Oklahoma, and even the SEC. Like, if you're Texas and Oklahoma, especially Texas, who's been down for a while, is there any reason to do this other than money? Is there any reason other than money?
There would be a certain, I mean, the prestige. I think they want to be one of the teams they would therefore be included into the most powerful conference that's not in the NFL. I mean, they might even be, you could put them almost on par with the NFC East some years. They would have, it's a prestige thing. I think as much as money's a big part. Texas doesn't need the money. I think a bigger thing for them would just be having a seat at the table, being labeled an SEC team, and being able to recruit the type of players that other SEC programs are going after. They would then be, they would create, in essence, a club, and no one else would be allowed, and they would be in it. So they kind of slamming the door behind them in a sense.
So one thing we've been seeing a lot of recently, in recent years, is other schools coming into Texas and taking a lot of their talent from them. So does this open the door for Texas to now say, "Oh, we're in the SEC, stay at home," or does this make it even more likely for teams like Alabama and other schools like that to come into Texas and say, this is already SEC country. Now come to the SEC program that it's actually going to, compete for championships and put you in the NFL and all that. Do you see it going one way or the other? Is this actually going to help Texas or not?
I mean, I think it could only help Texas. I mean, I think they get rated as much for talent as they ever will. I mean, I think everyone goes and gets Texas kids. I mean, this is everybody. The West Coast teams do it. Ohio State notoriously goes and gets people from Texas. Notre Dame does. Um, Georgia gets Texas kids anymore. So it has everyone's kind of going to Texas. This is maybe their way of, yeah, just jumping in and creating their own bubble. Like we're going to try to go get some Florida kids now. Maybe you could maybe argue that. I don't think much will change there.
Right. Yeah, and I do think that some of that stuff is a little bit overstated. I feel like a good program is going to find a way to recruit well, regardless of what conference they're in, or yeah. So I don't know that personally. I guess I like to ask the question, but personally, I feel like if Texas gets their crap together, it's not going to be because they joined the SEC or not. It's going to be because their coach did a good job and they finally started, making that stuff happen. So, all right, you are a Georgia fan, SEC program. How does this affect you? How do you think this affects other SEC programs?
I mean, if we're being really honest, I don't like it. Not a big fan. I don't know how you split it up. I mean, like, so the first thing the instantly you just go to like, well, who's coming to the East? Because someone has to come to the East, to the SEC East, and like, there's a lot of stuff floating out there. I'm not sure.
I really doubt we would see divisions in this scenario. I think they have to go to a pod system, or you could even, instead of just having a straight up pod, you could just protect three rivalries every year and then just split it up amongst the rest of the conference. Which I kind of like that. Like as far as the scheduling part of it, I like that. But man, like if you're another SEC program, like this just makes it that much harder. Like it is going to be so hard to go 10-2. Am I wrong?
It's going to be very difficult. There's no doubt. I think if you're South Carolina, if you're a Vanderbilt, a Mississippi State, this is not a great move for you. Because the pod scenario is something that's been thrown out there, and I think we've probably all seen it by this point. Of everyone, like you have split up in each to pods of four, and it's kind of subdivided. And how do you get a conference championship out of that? I don't know. Do you try to take the four best teams, the four winners of the pods, and play a semifinal? Like, what are your options there?
I believe you would take the top two at the end of the year. Everyone would, and for those who don't know, I mean, some of the SEC East and West teams don't play each other for like 6 or 7 years under the current system. With the pods, you would only have three teams that you play every single year, and then the rest of your conference schedule would rotate amongst all the other conference teams, which makes so you play everyone a lot more often. But yeah, man, this I feel like we don't really have a good grasp of what all this could do because there's so many different ways that this could go. And if anyone tells you right now they know what the sport is going to look like in 5 years, they're wrong. No one knows. There's just so many potential effects from this. The playoff, the 12-team playoff that just came out is actually going to happen. How do you think this could possibly affect the postseason and the way it's been, I guess, put out there so far?
I, it feels like it's the almost like the ice age of college football. It will change and it will never be the same. I don't know that I hate to say that I know because I don't. In a 12 team scenario, it feels like the SEC would massively favor the SEC in the way that we can just look at the teams that we have playing in our conference. Are you going to keep a 3-loss Oklahoma out if their losses are to Georgia, Alabama, and throw in Florida? Like what? Like, and all those three teams are playoff teams. You're probably going to put Oklahoma in there too. So yeah, it'd be a big advantage there. I I don't really like the way that it tables when looking that we need college football to be a national product. Still, this makes it very regional, and you take all of the talent and kind of just drop it all on a pile, and everything is coming to the southeast, or like Clemson, Ohio State would be kind of the one. Maybe Oregon would be like the ones that aren't like the rest, but everything else would be the same. It's a yeah. I'm not sure how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting just from the sake of the playoff, and and now it's we've had the Power Five for a while now, for about a decade, and while there were definitely conferences in that group that were better than others, it was like if it's fairly comparable. If one team goes 11-1 and another team goes 10-2 in a different conference, you have a pretty good idea the 11-1 team might be better than the 10-2 team. What is that? What I said? I don't remember, but
Yes.
um, now that dynamic feels like it's a little different because who's to say a three-loss SEC team isn't better than the one-loss Big Ten team? I mean, it's so much more difficult, I think, now to quantify. If you are a committee member, man, you got to be like looking at SP Plus at all the different analytic systems you can because your job just got a lot harder, in my opinion.
The more we keep talking about it, the more it feels like someone's going to have to step in here and not just allow this just to happen. Like it almost feels like politicians will be starting. Okay, you can't tell me that the Texas A&M. We've already seen tweets from the Texas Tech chancellor, the Texas A&M. I think the president of their everyone's strongly against it. Obviously, all the rest of the Big 12 is there's going to be there's a lot of power in Texas. Texas is the other schools in Texas are going to have to be what changes this. The rest of them don't have the power. Iowa State, you would maybe would have a little bit of pull, but probably not much. It would have to come from TCU, from Baylor, from Texas Tech, that no, this is not good for our state. This is not good for us as a whole, that Texas just leaves us and yeah, and we're left. So it does feel with this much money at stake, it does feel this could get litigated out.
Yeah, honestly, I think the only way this does not happen is if the SEC votes against it. And it
Mhm.
sounds like they need four schools to vote against it. Obviously, Texas A&M is a no. We've heard that Missouri is a no. Um, and that's where it comes to, you mentioned South Carolina and Vanderbilt,
Arkansas.
Arkansas, the Mississippi schools. So do you basically the question is, do you accept the paycheck, the extra check every year, or do you want to hold on to some possible chance of actually being a winning program? Because this makes it harder. So if you're those schools, do you want the money or do you want maybe another win or two a year?
Yeah, that's we will find out. We will find out all of these things. The vote there would love to be in that meeting, by the way, for that. Would just love to be in that meeting. Yeah, it does take four. A&M, obviously, a no. Like you said, they have to pull three other votes. Who are they going to be targeting? And it's probably the schools we talked about. You could argue maybe even a school like LSU. Maybe you try to get them to say no. Someone that would be whose status would go from second place in the East or in the West, sorry, to it feels like quite a bit farther down the food chain with those two schools that just in the pecking order of just money alone. Who is A&M trying to target for no votes because it will require that? Um, Not sure. I know there's a lot of phone calls being made probably right now, and it would be be lovely to hear those.
So now we have ADs dropping the bag on the front porch of other ADs. Is that what's going on?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is no holds barred at this point. This is a big deal. Like this matters. This is a really big deal. And I don't think we quite realize the aftershocks that if this does go through, what the rest is going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're Texas A&M, man, this could hurt. This could hurt a lot. Just because you had that one advantage now for 10 years over Texas, where you could tell kids, hey, you can come play in the SEC, and stay here in Texas. Now, little brother is no longer the only Texas program in the SEC, assuming this goes through. This hurts them. Obviously, the teams it hurts the most are the other eight Big 12 teams. And some of them just don't have a lot of leverage, I don't think. You mentioned Iowa State. They're at a good point right now for their program. I just don't think they have any kind of leverage as far as what what will happen with them. I mean, they would. If I'm them, I am really happy if 5 years from now I'm still in a Power Five conference. Is basically the way I'm looking at it.
Absolutely. If you're any of those teams, you just have to be after the news from I guess it was Wednesday. It was Tuesday night or Wednesday morning when it first came out. And we kind of thought it was rumors at the time. It's only gotten stronger since. But yeah, if after the news that broke, then you have to just be thrilled just to still be just for things to remain the same. You need to immediately start looking at options. And I think you have to start looking at packages that you can go back to Texas and Oklahoma with. Hey, we're going to pull some more teams in. These are the rights, because something to be noted too, the Big 12 still owns the rights for the television from those two schools until 2025.
Mhm.
And obviously now that can stuff, things can be terminated, not saying that it can't, but when is the cutoff date? Are you just going to allow just two pretty much lame duck teams, for lack of a better word, that's in your conference for a few years when everyone knows they're going to be leaving?
Yeah. Uh, I don't know. I wish I had some answers. That this is just kind of a mind blowing situation. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I was looking forward to the season, actual football. Now we have like this bomb dropped on us. There is no off season in college football anymore. Um, what are you rooting for? I guess one final question. What are you rooting for as a college football fan? What do you want to come out of this? For me, I think I mostly want to see Texas and Texas A&M play again, but with Texas still being in the Big 12.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd rather have it stay the way it is. Almost, I'd rather see the Big 12 pick up a few teams. I always thought they should have picked up Boise State, or you could say maybe Houston. A few, yeah, a few other teams. I For super conferences, it does kind of feel that's where we're headed. The numbers work out about right with and there's going to be a few teams that get kicked down to kind of the group of five, kind of what's left. They're the teams that are left over. Um, I, I I don't really want to see that. I have a feeling that's where we're headed. And it doesn't. I don't get a vote. They don't care what I think. But yeah, it would be. I think it'd be a tough look. I would rather not.
Yeah,
You?
I would also prefer if things kind of stayed the way they were a bit. I do like to see some of those non-conference matchups. I would love to see Texas and Texas A&M play again, but just not in the SEC. I don't know. It just feels like it could really it could really affect the future of the sport as far as I don't know. Right now we have 130 FBS teams. It feels like I mean, would you be shocked if 10 years from now we all of a sudden have 50 teams at the top level and everyone else just has to settle for what's left? I mean, if you're the Big Ten, don't you try to grab Clemson and Florida State right now?
I mean, I think you have to, but the ACC is not going to be letting them go. Yeah, no, if you're the Big Ten, you do have to be frustrated maybe with the position that you're in. I don't think Kevin Warren's a very good commissioner there. I don't think he's definitely one of the least powerful commissioners in college football, especially with the way he handled this past year. So it will be very interesting to see what the Big Ten does. I think they're who we need to watch now. What's their response to it?
Right. Okay, I think that about wraps up my thoughts, at least for right now. I'm sure we'll talk more about this in the future. Sounds like it's just getting started. Jay, thanks everyone for joining us. Let us know your thoughts at the Zone Blitz Podcast at gmail.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, other platforms as well, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know what you're rooting for in this situation. Pretty crazy times. We'll see you guys in a few days with our regularly scheduled podcast. But thanks for joining us today. Ashton, you got anything else?
Well, I'll let you know more when we reconvene on Monday. So.
Okay, sounds good. All right, everyone have a good week and God bless.